Hey everybody, Paul Vaillancourt here, back with another episode of Yes and Then What. My guest today is Anjali Bhimani, someone who I've known for years and years since our time back in Northwestern when we were in the Meow Show together. We had a really fun, interesting conversation today. We talked about all her career journey on stage and screen and now voiceover and video games, all the different things that she's doing. We also talked about her key to success, her mantra that she uses, which is success through lowered expectations. That's really interesting to hear her talk about that. And then, of course, we talked about her journey with improv and how it has influenced her work and how she uses it in the various different kinds, stage, screen, voiceover work that she does. I think there's a lot of really great stuff in here. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy my interview with Anjali Bhimani. Hey everybody, welcome back to Yes and Then What? And I have a lovely guest today, Anjali Bhimani. Please introduce yourself to the crowd.
Hi, I'm Anjali Bhimani. I am an actress, singer, dancer in that order, definitely in that order, and climber of things, and yeah, and a dear old friend of Paul.
Yes. Let's start there.
Yeah.
We met at Northwestern several times years
In
ago,
1904.
back when they were laying the foundation for the buildings.
Yes,
And you were a freshman, right?
it was, yeah.
You were a freshman, and I cast you in the Meow Show, which those of you who don't know, the Meow Show is the sketch and improv show at Northwestern. It's sort of a big deal on campus. It's sort of the one show that they've got, and it generates a lot of money for student activities and stuff. So it's kind of I was really happy to get to direct it, and I got to cast you, and that's where I met you, right?
Yep, that was, and it was. To this day, I still, so much of that whole experience is indelibly etched in my memory as formative and so many fun experiences. And yeah, that's that. I was very, very, very lucky and grateful that was my friend.
It was a real sort of all-encompassing sort of thing because it was really, I was in graduate school, so my course load wasn't what your guys' course load was as undergrads. Everyone else was an undergrad, and we rehearsed like every night for hours. I don't know how. In retrospect, I don't know how anyone got any homework done or passed their tests or whatever because we were.
But that was also like a very Northwestern thing, is that any of your show work, any of your performance work was outside of the regular curriculum.
Yeah.
So you had to want it, just like you have to want it in the real world. You had to want it. Like that was number one awesome training for real world focus.
That's a really good point, honestly. I hadn't thought of it that way. So you're saying that because it was like sort of like real life in a sense, like you have your day job that you have to do to stay alive, your schoolwork,
Right.
plus your artistic endeavors outside. Yes, and this was a very all-encompassing thing. We rehearsed, we wrote sketches, we built sets, we did these shows in this little Shanley shack, which was like amazing. It was like being a rock star for a weekend. And then we
toured. We went to California.
Right. We went
played in front of a giant room full of my aunties and uncles.
Yes.
It was perfect. It was so exciting.
Honestly, I look back at those times with such fond memories of what a fun time, grueling at sometimes and complicated sometimes, but really that's not what I think of first. I think of what a fun time it was and how super creative of a time it was, and how great. And so after that, I don't recall, did you continue on with Meow after that?
I did not continue on with Meow. I went ahead in my merry way of doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So I was a music theater person in addition to theater. So I did musicals, I did plays, I danced. So I did a lot of the dance concerts there. I was just, whatever and wherever they would let me perform, I was doing a little bit of everything.
Right. So you did a lot of different things. And let's start just for a second. This sort of heralds back to something we were talking about just before we started talking on air, as they say. And you were saying that like you
that people in Hollywood or in the industry have really tried to sort of focus you to say, oh, you should do this. You should focus on this.
In acting in general, yeah. In acting in general, I think that is something that is a mindset that has been pervaded for many, many years. And I don't think it's as much now, but definitely when we were at school, which is that you need to focus on one lane. You need to, choose theater, choose TV. When I lived in New York, or when I was doing New York and LA, everyone was saying, no, you can't, you have to either decide to be a theater actor or decide to be a TV actor. You have to decide, if you're gonna do commercials, then focus on commercials, change your hair, do all of this just for commercials. And I innately, like every part of my being, did not want to do any of those things. And so what I say what everyone else called career ADD, or lack of focus, I call diversification.
And now who's laughing?
I mean, yeah, I don't want to say who's laughing because the current circumstances are far from funny. And I feel terrible for people. I feel my heart is breaking most of all for the theater artists in the world right now, because, I have friends who are multiple Tony Award winners who cannot work right now. And but I am also very grateful that because I was doing so many lanes, now under the current set of crazy pants world circumstances, I can still be doing work because of my voiceover career,
For
because
sure.
of the stuff that I do online.
Yeah, and I think that's really, do you feel like that's a more, do you feel like, just sort of depart from our main point for a second, do you feel like that's a more modern version of being a performer, is that you have the liberty and almost the sort of obligation to engage in so many different things because there's so many outlets, stage, television, movies, internet, streaming, and the gatekeepers are all but gone in so many ways. You have a very active presence online. I was just watching one of your videos yesterday talking about a book called Die Empty, which I will 100% check out. I was like, oh, that sounds so great. That's totally up my alley.
It's so up your alley. You will love all of the Todd Henry stuff.
Right. I will put all of your links down below so people can check out your YouTube and your Instagram. It's really, and you are so active. And what I love about that is that you're just sort of always doing stuff, making stuff. It's not necessarily, oh, this can make me money or this, but you have this creative sort of urge that you just sort of like indulge in these different ways. That I think one of the things that has changed for actors, they used to be like writers could always decide whether or not they write. But now performers can also decide whether or not they perform and reach an audience. It's not like you're all in the closet.
It's a blessing and a curse, particularly if you are someone like me who is, your stereotypical Asian type A plus student who always feels like if you're doing 100 things, then you're not doing 110.
Right.
What is wrong with you?
Sure.
Get it together. So it's great to be able to have all of these outlets. There is an argument to be made for actually taking the focus, especially like if you're a writer or when I have things that I want to write, actually getting myself to narrow down or to choose the time and take the time and make the space to do that is very difficult.
Right.
But it's interesting to hear you reflect that back the way you said it, is because I think of it as just kind of engaging, and I forget that, yes, of course it's a creative process, even when I'm engaging and talking to people like you're doing right now with your podcast and with your video vlog, whatever the kids call it these days.
Sure.
Your video cast, is that what it's called? I don't know. What is this thing? I can't work it. I think it's a fine line between overdoing one or the other. And I do think it is absolutely possible to narrow. Like, I don't recommend anyone do all of the things that I do, because even I, like you heard me before we got on this morning, will be like, too many things, and it's 5:00 in the morning and I'm already late, like that kind of feeling.
For sure.
But I am lucky because, again, yes, it is possible to generate more and more creative flow just by doing. And it's one of the reasons why improv to me still is such a foundation, even though I never really did like rise in the ranks of any of the schools or any of that. It all comes back to storytelling. And if you can improvise, you can tell a story. If you can improvise, you can make a video.
That's great. That's a great bridge. You're doing better at hosting than I am. So let's get back to that idea. So once you were in Meow, right? Had you done, just sort of for background, had you done improv before that?
I mean, high school drama class, so no.
Okay, so
Yeah.
not so much. So what made you try out for it? I mean, you're a freshman. You're new on campus. What made you try out for Meow?
What made me try out for it is the very same thing that makes me try out for everything I do. I just want to play.
Oh, that's cool.
I would try out for anything that sounded fun and possible, and Meow sounded amazing, and there were auditions, and so I went. And I remember even that freshman year, this was so healthy for us, my best friend and I had a list on our wall of all the auditions that we had gone on before we get something. And I think at that point, and it was early in the year, at that point, right, I had already gone on 12 auditions.
Oh my gosh. I was going to say, how many could you have fit in before that? But that's a lot.
All of them. Any audition for something cool that I could do. And again, it's a testament to anyone who thinks, oh, that person's so successful or they have it so easy. Well, chances are there are a lot of attempts at doing something before they have gotten to the thing.
Right, because you're grinding the whole time. I didn't even know that. I just saw a bunch of people show up for auditions or whatever. I didn't know anyone's backstory at the time. And we never really talked about that. It was really weird. I just sort of like took everyone at face value. Here's where we are. Let's do this thing.
Which is so awesome, though.
I didn't realize you were grinding so much on it.
Yeah, that never happens because usually people are like going through your resume and seeing what you've done.
Yeah.
And you just took people for what they brought in the room that day. There it is.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, Jean was the only person that came back from the year before. Mm-hmm. She was the only sort of veteran. She'd done it more than me. And then all you guys sort of assembled together. It was super fun. So when you finished your tenure at Meow, and then you sort of go on to other things in the theater department, what did you bring anything from your improv experience to these other things, or is there anything that you took with you into your next sort of cycle?
I think at that time, if I'm being honest, the only thing I took with me was the tiny little bit of confidence not tiny little bit, but the bit of confidence that came from, hey, I was in Meow freshman year and I was the only freshman, so I must know how to do something.
Right.
Which is my level of confidence. I must know how to do something is like, really, that's a breakthrough for me. But later, I definitely, like, as time went on and looking back on it, I realized what I wish I had taken from it more, which was the willingness and ability to sort of break rules. Because so much of what, particularly in theater, so much of what is prescribed is a set, this is how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least, again, back then it was. I feel like now people are a little bit more willing to play. But it felt like, I'm doing Shakespeare. I can't possibly change things up. I can't possibly spend 30 seconds playing with this mime prop. I wish I had taken that willingness to, like, hey, director son, can I actually, that sounded so racist, oh shit. But like, hey, I meant like sensei. Hey, my director, can we futz with this a little bit? Can we play with this? Can we tell the story a different way? And now, especially looking back, I see how much that has factored into all the things that I have loved doing the most in my theater, TV, voiceover, everything career.
I just wanted to talk about sort of Meow for one more second. I don't want to make this all about Meow, but you were saying that you were really nervous a lot of the time, and you didn't really feel necessarily comfortable doing it. But I thought it was really interesting. I never would have known that you were just like putting yourself outside of your comfort zone and learning. What do you feel like? What gave you that ability to do that and just constantly live outside your comfort zone in that?
Live in fear. I think, again, this is something that I've come to in later years. Despite the fact that I often don't think I can do the thing that I am charged with doing, if that's a word, mm-hmm. I still love living in that place of discomfort. A dear friend of ours who's a very accomplished actor, we were having lunch and I told him, it just seems like you just know how to do so many things. Like you just step in and you jump in and do it. And he said, no, I just got really comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's the key to a lot of things, isn't it?
So much. So like even after school, I mean, after Northwestern, when I would audition for things, it was rarely because I'm like, I'm going to be great at this. I'm going to show them how great I am. It's like, oh, let's try this. If they hire me, I must have something to offer. I ended up doing an opera in 2006.
Oh,
and I went in and I auditioned, and I had been a music theater singer, but certainly not opera. And all of a sudden I'm doing an opera with Tony Kushner and Marie Sendak, and I'm like, okay, I'm terrified. I don't know if I can do this, but I must be able to do this because they hired me.
yeah.
And that mindset went that whole year of Meow. And all of the lessons that I really learned came from moments that I consider mistakes. Not necessarily, I don't remember any of the moments that were wild successes. For me, which might also speak to my own innate unwillingness to celebrate my wins. But I remember so many moments of, I afterwards when we debriefed, you're right, I should have done that.
Yeah, I'll do the
or forget should, I could have done that, and I didn't let myself. I could have given myself permission to do that.
That's so exciting. That's so interesting to sort of to be able to sort of like focus on that lesson of like, oh, to give myself permission to open up. And so even though that year was uncomfortable, it sounds like it started you in some ways on that journey. I mean, you clearly have a lot of this in you, but it was like a little bit of that journey of like sort of empowering yourself, like sort of saying yes to yourself a little bit.
Also, I think it's really empowering to put yourself in terrifying situations where you don't know what is going on and you don't know how you're going to possibly handle it, and to survive it, like just at the base level. Because honestly, survival is success. And anytime our subconscious is like freaking us out, it's usually because it's trying to keep us alive, right? So all of those like safety mechanisms that say don't put yourself out there, don't do this, don't do that, every time you push past one of those and you survive it, you trust more in your ability to handle unknowable situations or unknown situations. And so again, that's one of the reasons why I look to improvisers, like what I think of as real improvisers, you and all the gang that continue to pursue it after from Meow and so many other people. I look at them with such awe and such reverence, because that's where you live. You live in that place.
Well, you're an improviser too, for sure. And I remember your work, and also we'll sort of come back to this in a second, or actually let's get to now. So after that, you went on and you were very successful doing, like you said, stage and TV and movies, like all kinds of different things, sort of diversifying yourself, challenging. I think what's interesting is you were sort of led, but sounds like you were partially led by this challenge, like, oh, I haven't done this, or I haven't done, rather than finding your lane and sticking in your lane, you were like, where's the next challenge? Which I think is a really interesting mindset to live in. Which is why I think it's so interesting that years later, we're out of college for years, and then you show up at I.O. West when that was still a thing, God rest her in peace, and you were like in my level 1 class, like starting over or reconnecting with that. Where did that decision come from? Because look, you're working a lot, you're known, you know, people are reaching out to you, and I saw you on the Fox lot one time. I was there for a meeting, and you were like, oh, I'm doing this and that, but I was like, oh my God, I'm just here for one meeting and then try to find my car and get out of here. And you're just,
it's a big lot. It's a hard lot to navigate.
For sure.
One meeting alone is hard.
It's just physically hard just to walk everywhere. Oh, I'm exhausted.
Try it in heels.
Yeah, I know. I can't imagine. But then, so you're doing all this stuff. You're successful. Why take what some people might say a step backwards, or why go back to basics and take an intro to improv class?
Because the basics are precisely where I think the gold is. Because it's so easy when you have any level of success to think, okay, cool. I don't have to go back to the ballet bar. I'm the prima ballerina in this dance company, so I don't have to go back and do my basic exercises. There is no dancer in the world that would think of that. There's no dancer in the world that wouldn't go back and do their bar exercises. The same as there's probably a dancer in the world. I shouldn't say that. That's categorically probably not right. But I feel that way about improv, that I wanted to get back to that fun play. Here are some basic structures, very basic structures. The expectations are low. so I can't get in my way, because I know my expectations are already going to get in my way.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how low anyone else's expectations are for what's about to happen. And I feel like it helped. I was excited to break habits that I might have been having in auditions. I was excited to meet new people. Honestly, the biggest draw was you, because I remembered how I felt doing improv with you in college. And I had previous to coming to your class, I had gone to UCB and taken one intro class, maybe 2 classes. But I found that I got more in my head.
Okay.
I was doing that. And I have an incredible love for all the stuff I see at UCB, but for some reason it was making me more cerebral, which is the last thing I need, because as you can tell, I talk a lot. And then the talk in my head is like 10 times faster. So I wanted to come back and play with you, where I knew that I would feel comfortable. I knew that I would understand what was going on. Because even in Meow, in that circumstance, when I was a freshman and there were all these other people who were older than I was and had done more and had more experience, and I felt like everyone was better than me, you were kind of this solid force of, yeah, it's cool. It's all cool. In fact, I remember one of the things you said to me at one point.
So yesterday when we were talking, you said some quotes from me. I was like, oh,
I have a quote from you. But this was sort of a life philosophy that you had at the moment, but it applied. I was like, whoa, and I wasn't even high. And you basically just said, yeah, you just do what you can live with and live with it. And it was so simple. And I was like, this applies to guilt in the world, and this applies to karma, and this applies to so many things. But ultimately, the simplicity of you go to the next moment, and then you go to the next moment. Like you just keep doing. That was such a life preserver for me, when my brain was telling me, you're not good enough, all these people are so much better, how are you going to be able to help, how are you going to make this funny, how are you going to do blah, 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 all that crap.
Sure.
And that intro class specifically, yours specifically, did for me what I knew it would do, which is focus me on the different ways to tell the story. That it wasn't about being funny. Of course, you hope that you're funny, but you're funny because you're in real circumstances that are awkward, or you're in real circumstances where the timing causes people to laugh, or whatever. It comes from the story. It doesn't come from, yuck, I'm gonna tell a joke now. Because nothing like trying to be funny has never worked for me any more than trying to be cool has ever worked for me. Yeah. Nothing good in my life has ever come from me trying to look cool.
What I recall about that class, though, was that you totally killed it in that class, despite you were having voice problems. I know you were like with voice, but you killed it in the class. And I think what part of the thing was that you felt on stage, as an audience member watching you felt very settled. It wasn't, sometimes when people are just starting, they're like, you feel like they're going to shake apart or fly off into space, and you felt very settled. And I think even sort of thinking back to Meow, there's like those times, I think when I recall, where you just seemed very settled. You always had sort of a nice sort of grounding to you. And sometimes you get away from that and whatever, but we all do. But in this class in particular, years later, with some experiences and successes under your belt, I felt like you were always so settled and so solid in the scene. And the other people were really beginners in so many ways, that you were really sort of like a calming influence in the scenes that you were in.
Thank you. That's great to hear. I certainly can't speak to why that might have been there in college, because I was not settled, like on the inside. But I do think that this speaks to, I walked in and told myself success through lowered expectations, which is now like my greatest motto in life.
Great. Let's say that again, because you said that the other day when we were speaking, that your motto is, just say it really clearly for everyone.
Success through lowered expectations. Damn. Which sounds like you're saying, oh, keep the bar low and don't achieve things, but it's not that. It's almost like a Buddhist philosophy where you may put all of your all in it, but don't be attached to the outcome. And it's very easy to say, but it's very hard to do if you are taking this class because you think it's going to be the step to you getting to the next class, to becoming a writer, to being on a sitcom, like if you have all those expectations, on your experience in improv or on your experience anywhere, there's no way to be present. Whereas when I came to class, I was like, my investment in this class is to find out what I can learn in this class. The end. And to have fun.
Yes. And so
and
you know your expectations vis-a-vis result.
Yeah, and vis-a-vis have to be funny, have to impress.
Okay.
Impressing is such a shitty thing. Feeling like you have to impress, whether the audience or your teacher or in an audition, the people behind the table. Like, I wish that I could eliminate that from my world in any way, shape, or form, because it doesn't really serve. It's another thing like trying to look cool. Right. But we do it. We all do it. We all think, hey, if I do a great job, then someone will find me and put me on their show. It takes you away from what you're supposed to be focused on, which is that present moment. Right,
for sure. And so then you felt like that class was helpful because it sort of really got you to those things you wanted to have fun and to loosen up a little bit and to just recapture a little bit of what joy there was in improv.
And to remind myself of some basic touchstones I could go back to when I was lost in an improvisational situation, which, improvisational situations happen. They don't just happen at the improv and sitcoms and stand-up. They are everywhere in acting. And if you don't think that great actors in movies aren't improvising something, even if it's just gestures, I know in the episode that you did with Jean, her tip, you were talking about her detailed work, and I agree with you. Her work is so incredibly detailed on stage. Like, actors are using that stuff all the time. Great actors are doing that all the time. So yeah, I wanted to come back to those things where, okay, I'm nervous, I'm out of my head, I'm in my head, I'm doing all of these things while I'm acting. What can I go back to? What's a touchstone I can go back to? Yes and is the most popular one, but it's also a great one. And especially for the most improvisational jobs that I've had to do in the last few years, it's been like the core of everything. It's just
a concrete example so someone can say, like, can go and look at a piece of your work and say, oh, I see that in there. Like, what was the job where you?
Sure, yeah. So there's sort of this genre of streaming shows and taped shows that have come out recently, and recently meaning like the last maybe 5 years, that are RPG entertainment, which is role-playing game entertainment. So for people who play Dungeons and Dragons or any other role-playing games, it's basically people playing. Thank you. I played since I was 8.
Oh my God.
So yeah,
now it's really.
I love the fact that my world has brought me back to the gamer girl that I was since I was 8 years old.
That's awesome.
So much. But it's this great format where actors or role-playing or gamers or whatever you want to call us in that particular circumstance are actually sitting at the table playing the game, but we're much more in character and performing. So it's not like straight up LARP where people are running around, with swords and stuff. But there is a more in-depth storytelling thing. There's a commitment to the story that isn't necessarily there if you're playing at your home game. Right. Which means a lot to me because I take my fun very seriously. And if people are not committing to the story, I am not having fun. So I love this. I love this genre. So I recently did 2 series, and the most recent one was called Undeadwood. So you can kind of guess what that combination of things is. And I think it is still on YouTube and Twitch. It was with a group of people at Critical Role, which is a very famous.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Okay.
And dear friends, and they're incredible, and they're all incredible improvisers. But in that circumstance, playing an RPG is just long form improv, except instead of someone from the audience saying, okay, you're at a laundromat shooting a porno, you have dice and a game master telling you what the suggestions are, and you have to live with it. If the dice tell you failed, you have to narrate your failure. And so Undeadwood for me was such a great example of being at the table with 5 people, or 6 if you count our game master, which we should, who are just in it telling this story and going with whatever the dice tell them has to happen. it's one of the reasons I love role-playing games so much, is because it really is, it's long-form improv.
For sure. And I'm like I said, I'm playing with my kids now, and they're super into it, like 9 and 12. They love it. My wife's into it, maybe in spite of herself, but she loves it too. And we're having just so much fun with it. And I do feel like it's so much like improv, and we're sort of like improvising all the interactions and the stuff like that. And so this has sort of drawn you into this other world that I'm super fascinated by. And I don't want to sort of take up too much of your time, but I do definitely want to talk about this.
No,
so now you're going to Comic-Cons and conventions or sort of under the auspices of in this world, right? Your character's name.
Yeah, well, the Comic-Cons are also from my voiceover work in games.
Right.
So that is the improv in voiceover in games, for me, at least in my experience, there's a little bit less improvising. There's some leeway, but really a lot of that is pretty prescribed based on the character animation and based on the character generation that they have created and the stories they want to tell. There's one I've been working on that I'm so excited is going to be coming out this year, and I can't tell anyone about it, but it's coming out. But that one had a little bit more improvisation involved, just a little bit. But yes, it's also from the Critical Role, from Undeadwood, and from this other show I did called We're Alive Frontier, which was a zombie apocalypse RPG that I did 2 seasons of. And so yeah, I mean, I've been the Comic-Cons are. I mean, I'm so sad right now for many reasons that we can't gather, but definitely for those, because what I love so much about those is that they are a place where you can celebrate what you love and be celebrated for loving what you love. So anyone is free to dress up in the costume of the character that they love the most and be that character for the weekend if they feel like it.
And so what do you, how does it feel to be there, like at a Comic-Con, and these people are just like, I've seen some of the different films you've posted and pictures, and people just seem thrilled and over the moon to be talking to you and taking pictures with you. What's that feeling when you're there as a goer, but also as a featured guest?
Yeah. It's really incredible, and it sounds trite to say it's humbling, but it is, because I do think, especially with games, but with any piece of art where people have kind of welcomed you into their home, especially with games, because the players are getting to tell the story through you. They are actively engaged in the story. They have agency in the story. So I feel like there is this connection that you have with people who are playing the game, who then come to meet you, that is much stronger, because they feel like they know you because they've been you, not just because they've watched you. There's something special. They've been in the improv. They've been in the play. They've been in it feels like that for them. They've gotten to make the choices. And so for me, it's really, really wonderful, because I feel like the combination of my sort of life mission of helping people find their jazz and find their sauce, and like, ooh, what do you want from the world and how do we get it? Like, the combination of that love and my love of performing really intersect in that kind of interaction, in that kind of community interaction, where we can all talk about what we love about this, and how would you like the story to end? How would you like it? Tell me more about you. I really love it. And I also think that the broader one's voice is in the world, I think it's really incumbent upon us all to do good things with that voice. And if I get to go to these conventions and I get to inspire people just by talking to them and just by listening to them, that's a huge gift to me. It's very, 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 very fulfilling. And it reminds me how important it is to get out of my head and just tell the story, because that's what's affecting them. It's not me doing all the things I think will make this perfect. It's me telling the story with all the other people who are telling the story. And that's where it all comes back to improv, because that is what it all, like, at its core, I feel like that is the thing, is the story.
You've been a fantastic host of this episode. I'm gonna sit back and just let this coast across the finish line. Anjali, it has been such an absolute joy.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
I think what I love about sort of what you're saying there, I just want to sort of put a button on this and really highlight this idea is that idea of like your broad voice and like inspiring people, and it's reflected in there at the Comic-Cons, obviously for you, but then also like I said at the beginning, in your Instagram, in your YouTube videos, just sort of putting it out there, connecting with people, interacting with people. I feel like you're very responsive to people who are commenting and stuff, and it's just such a joy to see someone take so much joy in that. And I think you're bringing I think your mission is going really great, bringing so light and happiness to the world and inspiring people. And I know that I'm inspired just talking to you again. And I will put all the links down below so people can find all those things we talked about, all the series, the web series that you've done, and then also the your Instagram and YouTube, because I think it's a really fun watch. You're so charming and so natural on camera. It's just such a great joy. And also, I just love it, as I said before, I just love this sort of foray into books that you love. That's interesting. I'm always looking for a great recommendation, and your passion about it just drew me in, and you sold me. I'm definitely getting.
Well, you saw there's a giant stack of them, so I'm going to be talking about them all the time.
When I was watching the video the other day, you ended after one. I was like, what about all those other books back there?
Oh, they're coming. I got to pace myself. I got to have content all year, dude. I got to give the people what they want consistently.
Yes, 24/7 Anjali. Fantastic. It has been so great. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
It's been so great catching up. And everybody, I'm going to post this episode. I'll post all the links down below and where you can find Anjali online. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.